Welcome to Design Notes, the show in which we find out how the games you love get onto your table, with me, Ben Maddox. In this week's show, I speak to the designer of Grease Lightning and teacher of game design, Kathleen Mercury. We talk about the excitement of getting your first game published and how teaching kids game design can help them in all areas of their life. If you have any comments, please feel free to pop them into the comments section below. I hope you enjoy the show. So, I'm here for episode 2, and I have the newly minted, newly published designer Kathleen Mercury. Thank you very much for coming on the show.
It is such a delight to talk to you as ever.
So my first question is, and I ask everyone this, and please don't assume that it's... Don't feel falsely modest. I think it's the kind of question that people will go, "Oh, I don't," but...
I mean, I named myself after a god, so I can't really be accused.
Well, exactly.
Okay.
So, when did you realise you were good at what you do?
It was a process. I played a lot of games. I met some game designers, and I was like, whoa, people actually make these things. I was like, that's really cool. And then I came up with an idea, and, and I made it, and I tried it out, and it wasn't that good. But for me, I'm definitely a listen to feedback, make improvements based on feedback person, highly so. I've never once been like, oh, no, somebody doesn't like it. But especially the game that I have coming out, Grease Lightning from WizKids, I consider that my high watermark game because I've been working on that game for about 7 years, I think, something like that. And with every one of the significant number of complete revamps and iterations, I can tell how I've gotten better as my approach to solving problems in that game has gotten better. So it's definitely something that I think is a skill that I have honed. Some people are born designers and they can just create initial prototypes. They're like 90% finished when they hit the table. That's not me. I make bad games, but I'm good at persevering to make them better.
And so why... So you're someone you're a teacher and you're a successful teacher, and I think you're one of the few teachers, I guess, that doesn't do bad financially either. Why become a game designer? Is it because you want another string to your bow? Is it that you want to do a creative outlet, or is this something that one day you would hope could be your primary profession?
Oh, no, definitely not on the latter. Definitely not primary. I like being a teacher more than I like anything else. And I don't want the pressure to ever have to come up with something and on timelines. Like I'm very much at my pace when I want to do it. I started having kids design games. And a big part of what I do is about empathy and understanding the needs of the user. So not just that I want my students to understand what other people need when they play test and get feedback, but I need to understand what this process is for my students. So when I had them design games, I started designing games too. And so that's kind of where it came from. What else was part of your question?
Why design games? What is it? Is it a hobby? Is it a...
Well, it's funny actually, because the more I got into gaming and the more I met people in the gaming industry, the more I just made so many friends in the gaming industry. And in a lot of ways, having a game to work on gave me a point of contact. It gave me something to talk about, play testing. Oh, I'll play test your game. Sure, you can play test mine, and because, people in the gaming industry, smart. And, it's like when you want to solve problems and you like to have fun, like those are, that's my thing, so it just gave me the opportunity to keep hanging out with people that I really like. And there's always that challenge of, can I come up with something innovative? Can I come up with something that I haven't seen before, that others haven't seen before?
So if people don't know, you're someone who teaches gifted children. So the challenge is to find something that will keep these kids occupied, stop them getting bored, stop them getting distracted. So you went down the route of game design. What do you think the game design gives to the kids?
Well, and especially to clarify, when we talk about gifted, we mean high IQ kids, not because sometimes gifted can be applied to kids on all ranges of the spectrum or the lower end of the spectrum. Just and there's lots of people who disagree with gifted or they don't understand it, and that's okay. That's not what I'm worried about right now. So for my students, I need to give them creative problems for them to solve, where they can have a lot of agency and autonomy over the solutions. And I have to teach them what struggle is, because a lot of times at school, they get an assignment, they do it, they turn it in, they move on to the next thing. So for them to learn how to persevere through a problem of their own making to try to make it better, that's the trick. That's really what teaching game design or a lot of the other work that I do with kids is all about, is getting them to struggle creatively to come up with something that they can be happy with, to see success incrementally, to be able to see success as something that you can develop and work on over time, as opposed to just boom, rubber stamp A, move on.
I mean, how important is failure? Realizing that sometimes things just don't work.
Incredibly important. And to like everything from, sort of like instead of having them present with failure, as looking at it as like as a setback, even how I reframe it with them, but also looking at failure as an opportunity to go in a different direction than you thought. And that takes a lot of nimble sort of thinking. And that's a whole other thinking skill for some of these kids to experience sometimes for the first time. Okay, this didn't work, but how could this work? Or what does this show you? I mean, when my first talk at Tabletop Network was, especially when I was thinking about what could I present, because there's all these game designers that's on the thing, Tom Lehman and James Ernest, and all these people have made like tons of games, better games than I ever will probably, you know. So what can I talk about that no one else can? And I talked about failure and lessons learned from my students, because they don't always want to design games. They don't always like games, but they have to do it. So that's been a big thing for me as far as, working with them, is also trying to get them to buy into this process, even when they're like, if I don't do this, then I don't have to struggle with my perfect ideas, suddenly not being so.
And are their games any good?
Yeah, sometimes. Sometimes. I mean, a lot of times I'm taking kids from non-gamers to designers over the course of a semester, and that's a lot for anybody. A lot of times they've only played your basic sort of, games like Sorry and Clue and Shoots and Ladders and that sort of thing. Sometimes they only have experience of those. So I have to really build up their gaming literacy, get them to play a lot of games before I have them design games. And so, the ones who come in with a lot of gaming experience, their families have games, or older sister siblings who took my class who got games that they like because of my class, they definitely have an advantage. You definitely can see that. But over the course of time, what I really think is interesting, especially when they're reflecting on the process, in the beginning, their feedback is very observational. I like the pieces. I like how you design the board. And then as time goes on, they become much more insightful about gameplay and choices and other decisions the designers can make. And I think, you know, I wouldn't have ever considered myself, like for me to be a designer after a semester didn't happen. You know what I mean? It's
Hmm.
this process, but getting them to see these sorts of changes in how they approach things is what I'm trying to do ultimately. And I want them to like games. I want them to design games, but it's also, I have to give them something that exists outside of games for the class to be really worthwhile overall from an educational standpoint.
And so, what's the community of game designers like? You're North American based, and when you're someone who is, you're not an established designer, you don't have a raft of 15 games on BGG or something, and you design something and you approach people who are signed designers and part of the design community. What is that like? How open are they to letting you in and looking at your stuff and giving you advice and being supportive?
Hugely so, hugely so. I mean, I definitely wouldn't be where I'm at if I didn't have other people in the industry to meet and connect and build my knowledge of games, the way that I see how they approach games, the way they design games. Morgan Dontonville from Catan Studios, Jonathan Gilmore, definitely Daryl Andrews. All these designers have definitely, actively helped to support me, support my games, and present me with opportunities to have me meet other people in the gaming industry who could take an interest in my games. So where, you know, getting to where I can show a game to a publisher and them saying, this isn't right for us, but we want to see more of your work in the future. They help make those introductions happen. So I've been really, really lucky when it comes to those types of relationships directly fostering the work that I'm doing.
I mean, do you think the gaming industry is unique in its not only its openness but its approachability, that you can go just up to publishers at conventions? And I mean, the whole basis of my podcast has been that I've just gone up to people and said, "Hey, would you give over your time?" Do you think that's unique in this sort of gaming industry?
I think so, especially because, being a sort of niche hobby, I mean, yes, board games have become a lot more prevalent and a lot more widely available, especially in the US, as opposed to only being in like little game stores and all that. But you know, for the most part, a lot of people working in gaming, are doing this on their own shoestring budget, so any type of connection that they can make towards, other people, that's just money they don't necessarily have to spend in terms of advertising or marketing or whatever. And, they need product. So, if they meet someone that they think has potential and they're willing to like nurture that relationship in the hopes that they would, that I or someone else might show them a game later that does fit what they need. I've got one of my games that just got signed by Greenbrier Games. It's called Valkyrie. I'm so incredibly proud of that game. And it's one where I showed it at an online game event, game pitching event through, I think it was Metatopia. And I pretty much knew who was going to sign it. We'd already had some conversations and we made it official the next day, but it was still a really good opportunity for me to like a resume to present it and for people to see like, whoa, because there's a lot of people who know me, just because I love gaming and I like hanging out and I like working at cons and I like saying hi to everybody and I like making friends. So there's a lot of people who knew me, but then it was really cool to like, oh, like they were really impressed by the game. I'm like, yeah, I'm not just like, running around, like talking to people. Like I do like doing this, so that's been fun.
So we've already mentioned it. You've got Grease Lightning coming out soon. What was the journey from being the teacher who introduced board game design as a way to teach kids about iteration and failure and all of those useful things into a proper published designer, someone with a product that has great graphic design and great art and a box with your name on it? How did that happen?
Well, but it started with a Girl Scout song, Oh, I wish I was a little dirty birdie, dirty birdie. Oh, I wish I was a little dirty birdie, dirty birdie. I go up on the steeple and poop on the people. Oh, I wish I was a little dirty birdie. And my sister had made a reference to that song online in a post regarding her daughter not wanting to take a bath. And it made me think about like, wouldn't it be funny if there was a game where you were pigeons and you were trying to poop on people? And so I ended up turning that into this big, giant, three-dimensional game where everyone had flocks of pigeons and you were dropping poop cubes onto tiles that had people in cars. But then, then there's a falcon because falcons eat pigeons. And so on a big, long rod, you could slide down a falcon and smash each other's pigeons off buildings. And it was great, great fun. I mean, it's like funny and there were like lots of kind of jokes in it, but it actually worked as a game. And so I ended up, designing that one, like, so I actually could show it to publishers. And for a while, the response was, this is hilarious. This is great. We've never seen anything like it. Super expensive. Can't make it. But eventually, when Travis Chance opened Colossal Games and they put out a call for big, splashy Kickstarter friendly games, he ended up signing it. And so now it's kind of on hold with Colossal because especially for what the game is, it's now Dragnarok, so it's dragon themed. There's 4 dexterity elements, so it's already gone through like it's just like the grandchild of Dirty Birdie. And so so that one I signed, and when con seasons can happen again, then that one will come out because it just has such table presence. I mean, it's like scenario based fantasy theme, so I call it Flick 'em Up means Gloomhaven. Um, so that one's kind of funny. So yeah, so like that happened, and then Grease Lightning happened because my then partner had started this game, and I hated it, and I was like, "This is not a fun, crazy space race." It was a space theme originally, and I was like, "It needs to do this and needs to do this," and so I became involved in that one. And like I said, that's where, like, especially like working a whole different set because it wasn't like I had this crazy thematic idea that was pretty easy to gamify, but this was taking a game that had some real issues as far as gameplay and working and working and working and working to fix it to where it is now. And then with Valkyrie, I was asked by a publisher to make a game based on Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And so that was a whole other interesting challenge. Like, how do I create a game that encapsulates a person's life? And so
Hmm.
just all the different decisions that I made as far as like, everybody gets to be Ruth and all that. And the publisher ended up not picking it up. And so I had these cool tiles that I had made for it. And so that was another exercise in, okay, what can I do with this, with these cool tiles, and take it in a totally different direction? And then I always wanted to make a game about Valkyrie. I just thought, just really cool Norse goddesses who are really like active agents, and so I wanted to like, okay, Valkyrie, and then it just like things just came together. Like Valkyries could choose who fought in battle, they could choose who were slain, they made tapestries out of the bodies of the dead, and that's what you do is you collect different colors of Vikings to basically fill in your paint by number tapestry. So like just how things sort of came together, just sort of like this evolution of different challenges. I work well with design constraints. If it's like, hey,
Hmm.
Kathleen, go make a game, I'm like, but like a friend of mine is starting a game company. So about like Travel Buddy, my friend Josh Lobkovitz. So it's like travel games that will be travel friendly. And I thought about what's a place in the world that I love? The tulip fields of the Netherlands. They're stunningly beautiful. So I'm working on something with that right now. So I work well within constraints, or I've got some other ideas of my own that just kind of come out of nowhere, but they're still cooking.
And so, can you give us a brief overview of your process? How do you go from idea, standing in the shower and going, I have it, to, a thing in a box that I can play and be terrible at?
I know I'm bad at my own too sometimes. One is there's a few things, and this goes well with like, failure and all that is, I prototype fast and cheap. Just whatever kind of material, like index cards, Sharpies, scissors, just to like get ideas down and just to start making it and playing it with it. But the other thing too is for me, I don't design very well on my own. So that's been one of the issues, like things have kind of slowed down for me during COVID because, like play testing with other people, getting their feedback has been so incredibly important. So when I have, like my Tulip game is on Tabletop Simulator. So that's when I have been able to play test. And the most recent play test showed a huge flaw and problem in the game that I hadn't discovered yet, which was awesome, because now I know it's there and I can fix it. So, yeah, it's just, there have been a lot of times for St. Louis. I live in St. Louis, Missouri now, and we've got a really good design community. There's a lot of publishers in St. Louis, and one of the things is, I'd have people come to like our board game design meetups with these prototypes, and we'd never seen these people before, which is fine, and play test their prototypes, give them lots of feedback that they didn't like, and then we would never see them again.
Hmm.
And I think if you take it personally, if can't hear anything bad or negative about your game, like yeah, this isn't the thing for you, and that's okay. If you want to just make a game that you love and it's got everything you like in it, that's great. If you want to make a product for a publisher to sell, there's a lot more flexibility in your thinking that you have to get it to that point. So it just depends on what do you really want from this game? And if you're willing to approach it from, a lot of things, removable parts, there's no such thing as perfection. Anything can be made better and anything can be shaped to fit the needs of a publisher. If you take that approach, you have a much better chance of getting something on the shelf as to be like, nope, this is my perfect baby and this is the only thing it can be. Well, good luck. I hope you find the right publisher.
So, I detest playing games online. I tried. I have Tabletop Simulator on my computer and I never started up. But, because of the pandemic, because of, constraints, do you think things like Tabletop Simulator, rather than, save the gaming industry, which is a little hyperbolic, I guess, have they facilitated new games being developed, these kind of platforms?
Oh, absolutely. Because I think one other thing too is not just with Tabletop Simulator, but online game pitching events, where you've got people who can't afford to travel to game conventions to pitch their games to publisher. That's a huge barrier for access. Also, people who are introverts, who don't enjoy game conventions, going up to publishers and all that. If they can get in on one of those, then, that's it. They can pitch their games from the comfort of their own home. There's a lot of really positive benefits from this, like from education, for gaming that, the pandemic has forced us to like modernize and move to the next step, so that would not have happened had this not have happened. So I think there's a lot of positive benefits. I mean, I am a tabletop gamer, right? So I want to play games at tables with people. I miss the social aspect of all of that. But if this means that we can still have games made that you can play test with more than just your singular local area, that you can play test with people all over the country and get a much wider range of feedback and ideas about your game, like that's totally a win. Tabletop Simulator sucks. Any game that you play on there takes 2 to 3 times longer than you normally would, And so from that end, I mean, I'm terrible at it too. Like I actually had to print out like all the commands and I have it like next to my computer, like an old lady, like, what do I do for this? Because it's like I'm bad with it too. Like how do I pick up all the cards at 1 second? And people are like, oh, you just do that. Like I get it because I don't necessarily love it either, and so not necessarily loving it, and also for me being a teacher and completely having to come up with new ways to teach everything that I've ever done online, that's been the game design that I've been playing mostly this year, quite honestly. So I do look forward to when we can just, slap some really messy stuff on tables and go from there.
So you've designed Grease Lightning, you've pitched it, you've got it signed, and the agreement is that it's going to be published and it's going to be published at this particular date. What input do you have after you sign that contract? Or with this game, what input have you had with regards to, graphic design, typefaces, art, all of this sort of stuff?
Not so much on the art style of things. With Grease Lightning, I was hoping that the art might have a little bit more of like a 1950s muscle car meets ancient Greece kind of look to it. But I also understand why they just went with Grease and just because it's beautiful still. So I'm okay with that, And so art, not necessarily too much. Gameplay, yes. After we sent off, and when I say we, I co-designed with Mark Selmeyer, like I said, my former partner. And so when we sent it off, then they did a whole round of play testing. And it's like, I got back like 10 pages of feedback. And I was like, I thought it was done, But there was a whole lot of stuff on there that, going through it all, it really narrowed down to like a few key points. There's some things like, sure, if you want to make that change, I know that's not going to change anything. Because I've play tested this game so much. Like, I know this game from the ends. I can stretch it from any direction. So yeah, that. And then there were some points where it's like, I understand why you think that, but A, I've already tried it. Here's why it doesn't work, or here's why this has to be the solution for this, and da-da-da-da. And so in the end, like, it was a relatively easy process to kind of finalize some key design points. There's some changes that were made based on material costs that really didn't impact anything. So like, that's fine. With Dragnarok, formerly Dirty Birdie, I redesigned that thing 3 times, big time, and that was a lot. And then right before the school year, they wanted me to come up with a solo player variant because solo player variants are really popular. And it's like, I totally see the value for that. I don't have the time to do it. I just can't. And so they're like, okay, we'll take care of that. So good. I mean, they wanted to give me the opportunity, and designing a solo variant, I think, is really interesting, but just didn't have the bandwidth. And then we haven't really started too much on Valkyrie, but how I had it designed was to basically show one of the ways that you could create like the player boards. Like, there's a possibility basically to create individual Valkyrie characters that have their own specific abilities and skills, or you can just make them all kind of the same. So I just sort of presented it knowing that there was some flexibility. And so when we talked about the game and what it could be, I had all those pieces that we talked about. Like, it's whatever, at that point, the publisher has to stand behind it. So whatever direction you want to go here, like, here's some options for you. So it just depends. I haven't yet had the experience of signing a game and them saying thank you very much and then running off with it. So that's good, you know.
And so how do you enjoy that challenge? You know, you get these pages of notes. Are you someone who deals with criticism well, or, you know, because I'm someone for whom, you know, eventually the criticism will sink in. My instinct is to go, no, how dare you? I am an artist. But I mean, but then, you know, I get over that eventually. I mean, is it demoralizing to get these set of notes, or do you just think, oh, this is brilliant, I get to improve things now?
Yeah, I fall on the latter. You know, I don't believe like that I'm so special that what I come up with is the only answer. And like I said, you know, it takes so much. I mean, I will always consider the most important changes made in any of my games to be the ones that other people came up with. Like I've come up with a lot of good stuff, a lot of cool stuff that I'm really proud of. But when somebody comes up with something to either highlight a problem or proposes a solution that works really, really well, I will always consider those to be the most important aspects. So it's not personal, you know, like no one is saying I'm a bad designer by giving me, you know, pages and pages of feedback. You know, it's like these are questions and, you know, we can work together to find solutions. There's not been anything so far that's been a nope, won't work kind of moment. There's nothing that's been there like that. And I think, you know, the more open and flexible you are to, you know, if design is all about understanding the needs of your user, for me, it's understanding the needs of my publisher. And if I can't meet their needs and I don't have a game that can work for them, then, you know, then it's probably, they should probably not publish it. So I'm okay with it.
So Grease Lightning is the game that's closest to actually being in the real world and being manhandled by lots of gamers. How excited are you by the prospect of the UPS guy ringing the bell, opening the parcel, pulling back the packing peanuts and seeing the box with the art, with the title, and more importantly, with your name on it?
I am really excited about that. I really am, you know, and like to have the box with my name, you know, that's good. But I think it's, for me, the more important thing in a lot of ways is just the fact that it's going to exist, period. You know, I mean, yes, my game, and I know exactly how much work I put into that. And, you know, Mark Selmayr, um, he's an amazing graphic designer. So I could come up with all kinds of like crazy ideas and solutions. He could really visualize and create relatively quickly, you know, design solutions that fit that. And so, and especially considering how important like the visual physical space is, you know, you've got these diverging pathways and little wedges you put down that change the course of the race and all that, having somebody that could really visualize that and put that together. That's why this game is getting made, you know, from the two of us. Like I'm very much attuned to like player experience and, you know, different aspects. He can make a lot of stuff work. And so I think it's really a testament to that whole process, that collaboration. But one of the other things too is like selfishly, like I have a website, KathleenMercury.com. I put all my game design teaching resources out there for free, you know, for anyone who wants to teach game design. They're used all over the world. It's super cool. Um, but for me, having my name on a box and the credibility that that gives me when it comes to like talking about this stuff, you know, it's one thing to be like, oh, I'm working on some designs, they're not out yet, but it's another thing to say like, okay, here's, here's here my games are out there, and then here we go. And it's not that I don't care in terms of like personal glory or anything like that. I'm really passionate about this work, especially what you can have like kids do with design, or how I think you know how adults can design. And so I'm really happy for that, as far as like I said, yeah, the credibility of it. Like I am a designer, I do know what I'm talking about. There is something on the shelf with my name on it.
So I've got a question for you. You're at a convention, they're back on again, and it's the evening, and you go to a bar and you're having a drink, and you're walking past a booth, and you hear your name, and there's a group of gamers, and they're talking about your work as a designer. And so you sort of sidle into the corner and you eavesdrop to hear what they're saying. What do you hope they would be saying about your work?
That it was fun. You know, that it was fun. You know, strive to create an experience, for other people. And if you create something where they have a good time and they're laughing and, if it was fun for them, that's great. If it wasn't fun, if they're like, that was okay. I'd want to know too, like, oh, hey, I'm Kathleen. Tell me what's going on, and because really and truly, if a problem exists and I don't know about it, I can't do anything for it, and I might learn something that would help me in future games. It's like, well, this, God, that's a good point. Thanks for telling me, and because like I said, there's plenty of amazing games out there that I do not enjoy. And they're just not my cup of tea like anybody else. So if it's not your thing, that's awesome. Thanks for trying it. Appreciate that. And what was it about this game? Like, oh, you want a heavy economic engine that you can develop over the course of 3 hours. Okay, great. let me point you in the direction of the designers I admire who do that really well, because that's not me. Most of my games are like half an hour to 45 minutes, because I can play test them with kids. I have play tested them with kids. It's a very specific type of, game that I like. And so if it's not your jam, then that's cool.
So before I asked the last all-encompassing question, you wouldn't be here unless, you were active in the industry. So give us a lowdown on Grease Lightning and when's it coming out and when can we try it and buy it and all of that good stuff.
Okay, cool. So Grease Lightning is themed in like basically your sailors and the Hydra Regatta, right? And you're doing 2 laps around a track that there's some hydras in the middle, but because hydras have lots of heads, they pop up. And so the track is made out of these interlocking sort of like pizza pie shaped wedges, and the paths, converge and they move in different directions. And all along the way, there's different types of icons where you can like have, see how the gods are favoring you, or you can get additional speed or meet up with the Hydra, or collect fish, and all that. And there's also a press your luck system when it comes to racing, so that you can like try to push it to keep going a little bit farther, or, you can play it a little bit safer and then hopefully manipulate the board to like sort of make up for the difference in the dice. So you've got different types of, choices that you can make as far as, helping yourself, trying to mess somebody else up, and it's a fun. I really wanted to capture like a race game where you feel like there's some like jockeying for position and really trying to take advantage of what's on the board. But then there's also that element of your own dice and like how you can, well, sometimes the dice don't favor you, but there's ways around that too. So trying to give people like choices on the maybe like more of a traditional game where you roll dice and move, but lots of different choices as far as like how that happens to where you capture a race feel.
And when's it coming out?
In June from WizKids Direct Retail.
And so my last question then, you can choose to answer this in any way you choose. Why is gaming good?
It brings people together. I'm of the opinion that, people matter more than games. I love games. I love playing games, but, the people that I'm playing with matter. If you're a stranger, we're playing games, I'm not going to like pepper you with questions about your background. I might ask a couple, but, in a time where you can, where we selfishly, think about over the course of human history, that we can be so privileged to sit down and have these extended periods of leisure time where we can just engage in, a fictitious competition, and intellectual stimulation and recreation, all the reasons why we sit down at the table. If I can create a game that makes people want to have that experience at a table with other people, with friends or with strangers, I think that's amazing, and I feel really lucky and privileged to be able to do so.
Fantastic. Well, Kathleen Mercury, thank you ever so much for giving over your time.
Ben Maddox, thank you so much. And I'm so excited because I am moving to Romania to teach abroad next year. And my sister lives in Berlin, which means I'll have lots of reasons to go to Berlin. And I'm so excited that we're going to be able to hang out.